So it's about building a community that makes everyone successful, as well as products and services that are geared towards women. And so we're trying to level the playing field. You've probably all heard that venture capital, about 2 to 6% is given to women for their entrepreneurial pursuits. And yet they are the first ones to pay back early, pay back more in full, and invest more in the community. So we're really a great investment. And we also, when partnered with gentlemen, can be amazingly successful. So we are a 503c, so nonprofit, and we look forward to profiling founders, funders, and anyone who has a skill or an interest that they think will help forward our members. You will find we have a tremendous amount of programming. We try for every other week. So we really want to pack the calendar, and the events will vary from skills to help you make your business successful, how to select a great investment if you're a funder, as well as actually connecting founders and funders together to make opportunities happen. So really, really committed to helping everyone become successful. The last piece of information is please use our chat to add questions, anything that you would like to ask Orly. We are targeting the bulk of the presentation to complete on the hour, 1 o'clock if you're in the East Coast. And any questions, if you want to linger on a bit longer, Orly has agreed to stay and answer additional questions. And if we don't get to all of your questions, we will do a follow-up. Additionally, we are recording this session, so it will be available for everyone to pick up at a later time. So again, please use the chat to tell us where you're calling from. If you can have your live picture so Orly knows who she's speaking to and knows there's a live audience out there, fantastic. We have a huge group today, so we're going to try and keep things moving. My name is Lori Rosenthal, and I am our VP of Programming. So if you have any suggestions, please forward them my way. And I fall into the friends category. I am a human resources professional, kind of the odd lot in the finance community. So I'm just going to give you a little brief introduction to who Orly is and how lucky we are to have her, because we really want to get to her presentation and not listen to me talk about her. So she is a speaker, an educator, and a brand architect. And what she's going to share with us today is how to get your company to stand out from all of the noise. What can you do to increase your chances of success? She has taught at Wharton. She's very involved with Drexel University. And we shared a little bit of her bio on our website. So let's get into the meat of it, Orly. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. One thing that that Lori didn't mention, which may already be in my bio, is that my book, Ready Launch Brand, a lean marketing guide for startups, was published last May and was the #1 new business book release on Amazon in April of 2021. Some of the material that I'm sharing with you actually comes from my book. But yes, let's get started. I'm going to go ahead.
And let me just apologize to you, Orly. I have it in big print, but I was so in a hurry to get to your presentation. And Orly has offered a 20% discount for anyone who's interested in her book. Just reach out to her directly. So I think you'll find it a great investment. So I'm going to get off your soapbox for you, Orly, and let you take it away.
Yeah, all that information will be at the end. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So let me view slideshow. Here we go. All right, so I've lost everybody. Where did everybody go? I don't see you when why is that? I literally don't see anybody once I go to.
I think if you, I don't know. I think it should be you and your presentation, maybe. I'm not sure.
It's in the view, it's on gallery. So, anyway, well, I will not be able to see you during my presentation, but hopefully you'll be able to see it. So here we go.
We have not yet picked up your shared screen.
Yes, because because I haven't shared it yet. Oh, that might be the problem. Okay, technology, love it, hate it. I think we've all kind of gotten to the point where we just assume that things are going to go wrong. So thank you so much for being patient. Yes, it does help if I share it, doesn't it? There we go. Okay, now we're in business. All right. All right, let's get started. So, and I do see all your lovely faces up there, so thank you. All right, so thank you so much for being here today. And as Lori mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how to build your brand in such a way that you can attract your ideal client. And this is something that you'll hear me say a lot. It's not about attracting everyone. It's about attracting the people who actually need what you are selling and want it and will pay for it. That's a big if as well. So, so before I get into the meat of my presentation, I want to just kind of get us all on the same page. And then at the end of the presentation, we will have breakout sessions, and you will all have the opportunity to practice your elevator pitch. All right, so let's get started. So this is where I begin really every conversation, which is to say, it's really noisy out there. So to figure out how noisy it really is, we're talking 12,000 messages a day, which, by the way, translates to more than 4 million a year. And this is probably a little underestimated. I've seen it as high as 20,000, but I figured that 4 million plus messages a year was enough of a mind bender, and we could just use that statistic. So it's as if each of us is standing in the middle of Times Square. It's a noisy world. How do you stand out? And this is especially the case for startups, right? Because as we all know, the failure rate of startups is pretty high. So here are some statistics. 20% of startups will fail by year 2. And 50, that means half, will fail by year 5. So we're going to take a moment here to do a poll. And the question is, what is the #1 reason that startups fail? So, so there's the poll, and if you guys would like,
I don't know why it didn't launch. So hold on.
No, I see it. Do you guys not see it? Because I see it.
Here we go.
Yeah. Oh, because I'm the co-host, I get to see it first, I guess. So just you can just answer one of those. Let us know which is the one that that makes sense to you, and then we'll talk about it. It's always fun to see this kind of fill in as I'm watching it. It's like, kind of seeing the results in real time, which is pretty cool. While that's happening, I'm just looking at the chat to see. Okay. Well, nice to see some Philly people here, so that's great. I'm also right outside of Philadelphia, which I didn't mention in my introduction. Okay.
We have
So we have, so let's see. Okay, so not enough money. And you know what, that's so interesting because that does make sense. However, that's not the answer. The answer is no market need. But here's the interesting thing, and people did say no market need. But here's the thing that's so interesting about this statistic is the reason you run out of cash is because there's no market need. So the two are really go hand in hand, because if you think about it, if you end up spending a lot of time and resources and putting a lot of, and especially marketing dollars, we're not going to get a chance to really talk about marketing, but this is, you end up spending a lot of money on something that people don't actually want. And that's why the failure rate is so high, and that's why it's the #1 reason. So the #2 reason is run out of cash, and the #3 reason is the wrong team. So those are the top 3. Thank you for taking the poll. So how do we avoid this, right? How do we avoid the no market need and really trying to get more about, like, how do we stand out, right? So the first question I want you to consider is, who are you? And by that, I mean, who are you as a brand? Because let's face it, if you don't know who you are, how are you going to convince anyone else to buy it, right? So you want to really think about, am I clear on who we are as a brand? And then, of course, am I clear on who we want to talk to? So the next thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to take a little break from the statistics, and talk about something that I cover in my book, which is this idea of an ugly baby. So what happens when the market tells you that you have an ugly baby? And what I'm going to show you first, I'm going to explain this idea through an example. And the example that I'm going to give you is bubble wrap. So all of you are familiar. I'm assuming everyone is familiar with bubble wrap. I don't think I have to ask that. But here's the thing that most of you probably don't know is that bubble wrap was not originally intended for its purpose today. So the inventors, which was actually a U.S. engineer by the name of Fielding, and the inventor, who was Marc Chavan, who was a Swiss inventor, got together, and they decided to fulfill a need that they thought they could fill. And that was, at the time, we're talking late 50s in the US, wallpaper was all the rage. And Fielding and Chavan decided that they had come up with a great idea, which was textured wallpaper. So most people don't know that this was the original intent for bubble wrap. So, and of course, when Chavan and Fielding went out to decorators and pitched this idea, it was met with a resounding no. I would probably say hell no is probably what they heard. And imagine your living room covered, all the walls in your living room covered with bubble wrap. And now imagine that you have 3 children under the age of 8 popping bubbles all day long. The mind really reels at the thought of what that could look like. So what they did, when they realized that the market had basically told them they had an ugly baby, they went back and they tried to find the right market, because they had a great product, but great product, wrong market fit. And then they landed on it. They found it, and it's shipping. And of course, now we're all familiar with bubble wrap. In fact, bubble wrap has become such an ubiquitous term that, like Kleenex, we use it to describe anything that protects our products in shipping. And then as a result of this pivot, which obviously they needed to do, here's what happened. Today, whoops. Oh my goodness. So here's what happens. Here's what happens on the technology end is all of a sudden my mouse decides not to work. So again, we just roll with it. So this number, this 10.7 billion, that is the global market value of bubble wrap that's expected to grow by 2023. So clearly they found the answer, but what they didn't do, and this is something I really want you to hear, they did not sink money into the wrong thing. And I've, part in my book, I interviewed 25 entrepreneurs, and one of them discussed this very idea where they sunk money in without first understanding who really needed their product, and they ended up closing the company. And this happens all the time, right? No market need, that's why it's number one. So now I'm gonna share with you the story of a brand that got it right from the get-go and has gotten it right the whole time, which is Airbnb. So most of you, I would imagine, if not all of you, are also familiar with Airbnb. And here's the thing about them is that they got it right from the get-go. They did there was a lot of research, and obviously we don't have time to talk about that, but they got very clear on who and what, right? The why they were doing this was they were building something that did not exist before Airbnb, which is the immersive travel experience. And so they launched in 2008. And at the time, they understood that such a traveler existed, someone who actually wanted more than just a place to stay, right? So they weren't competing. This is the other important thing. They understood they weren't competing with large hotel chains, even very high-end hotel chains. They were creating an entirely new travel experience. And as a result, they've sort of built this idea of belonging anywhere, right? And the combination, which is, I think, one of the things that's so interesting about Airbnb. First of all, Airbnb does not create anything. They don't build a product. They don't actually make anything. What they do is they're a curator of content, and they connect the host with the traveler. That's their role. And what I think is really brilliant from a marketing standpoint is the fact that the hosts are actually brand ambassadors. They are ambassadors for the Airbnb brand, and they're also an ambassador for their city, their town, their state, their country. And this connection of, having people who live there kind of build this travel experience for you. Again, now it seems so obvious, but in 2008, it was not. And so as a result of having done it right, all along, this is what they now have on their website, which is really recognizing the role that hosts play in their success. And so this happens to be Chelsea from Philadelphia. Since I'm in Philadelphia, I figured I would have a little shout out for my city. And what they have is people from all over the world who literally open their doors, so virtually open their doors to their homes. It's really kind of really brilliant, actually, this whole concept. And they've really kind of moved into it, but it's been their idea all along. So again, sorry about that. So here's where Airbnb is now. So in a little over a decade, they've grown to 2 million listings, including 1,400 castles, which I always find so fascinating. When I first started looking at Airbnb, which was probably around 2012 or 15, they had 700 castles. So, and they're in 34,000 cities, 191 countries, and they now have had 60 million guests. And the other thing that's interesting about them is that every month they have 100,000 visitors on their website. So where does that take us next? The next thing you want to really think about, and this is something, again, that Airbnb did so well, is they got clear on their value proposition. And in fact, one of the things I wanted to mention about Airbnb is they were so clear on what they were doing and who they were doing this for, that their pitch deck has now become an example of how to pitch to investors. And they were able to get money almost immediately because they had done such a great job presenting the concept, and they figured out their market, and they really understood the value they were bringing. So what is the value proposition? Another way to think of it is your why. Why people need this. What is this that you've built? And what you really want to think about is, what is the one point of difference? Remember, we are all standing in the middle of Times Square, and we do not have the time to figure out what this is. We don't have time to look at 20 different possible things we could get out of it. We want to know the main thing. And so to do that, you really have to get clear on who you are, which is why we start with brand clarity. And then what you want to do is focus on the right messaging. And messaging has to connect with your ideal customer. So what you want to avoid is this idea that if you talk to everyone, you engage with no one. And that's something that I see a lot, is that people are afraid they're going to leave somebody out. But the truth is that if you get clear on your value proposition and you communicate that value to your ideal customer in language that they understand, and do it very quickly so they can find you, right? Because the goal is people need to find you so they can buy you and refer you. If they can't find you, all that goes out the window, which is why it's so important to make sure you understand who you're talking to and what is really important to them. So focusing on the why, not the what, is really critical. And that brings us to the elevator pitch. So before I get into the elevator pitch, I want to talk a little bit about this why versus what idea. So, most people, when they try to tell you about their company, they go down into the weeds and they tell you all about the company, but that's not an elevator pitch. Let's look at what an elevator pitch really is. So the idea of an elevator pitch is not to tell you my whole story. And I know all of us have experienced this very uncomfortable moment when, back when we were in person and we would go to networking events, you'd get locked in with somebody who literally would just, without taking time for a breath, right, would tell you everything about their company. That's not an elevator pitch. That's a sales pitch. And the point of the elevator pitch is you just want to get somebody to say, tell me more. That's the whole goal of an elevator pitch. It's not to tell you everything about the company. It's really to get you to say, wow, there's something here and I want to learn more. So as I said, an elevator pitch is not a sales pitch. This is really, really important. And a sales pitch is all about the what and the how. So here's the interesting thing. This is how those uncomfortable networking moments happen, where you start looking around the room, just try to find somebody else that you can go to. We are always, of course, we're excited about the what and the how, because that's what we do every day. But remember, it is never about you. An elevator pitch is not about what gets you excited. It's about how you're solving a pain point, a real problem for a real client, and the one you actually want to invite into your conversation. So when you focus on the what and the how, you're assuming that somebody already knows what you do, and that's not true, right? And also, if those of you who have watched Simon Sinek's TED Talk on the Golden Circle, right? People don't buy what you do, they don't buy how you do it, they buy the why. They buy the why. So that's really what the elevator pitch. It's all about the why. And again, it's not about your why. It's not about, your founder story and how great it is to have this company. It's really about why someone who is your ideal customer would want this, right? So you need to think about them. And that's really what you want to have in mind always, is how are you solving someone else's problem? So I'm going to walk you through the elevator pitch building blocks, which I've already alluded to, but I want to just kind of clarify that. So the first step is not that, because it skipped ahead. So forget you just saw that. So number one, make me curious. So we are all human beings, and humans are curious by their nature. And so what you want to do is think about, how do I get somebody to even listen? So I assume, right, that we know nothing about you. That's the good assumption. Assume that the person you're talking to doesn't know anything about you. And what you want is to bring them into the conversation in a way that helps them start to at least hear what you're saying and get curious about wanting to know more. Remember, the point of the elevator pitch is tell me more. And by the way, if someone doesn't say tell me more, it means you're not talking to your ideal customer, and that's okay. One of the things that I love about a true elevator pitch should do two things. It should help you connect with your ideal client, and it should also help you avoid people who are just kicking tires and you're going to waste a lot of time trying to chase after them, and they're never going to work with you. Because if they don't get excited about your pitch, they're not going to get excited about what you can do for them. So number two is identify a real problem. And again, remember, it's not your problem. It's not how you're keeping the lights on. It's the problem that your ideal customer is struggling with. They've got a real problem, and you identifying it helps them understand that you get them. And that is the best way to start a conversation, is you clearly have done your homework and you understand what's really troubling them. And then, of course, if you've identified the problem, we assume that you have the solution. So be the solution. Be that solution and show me how you're going to solve my problem. Because remember, these things are keeping me up at night. If I have a real problem, then I actually am looking for an answer. And you having identified the problem that is meaningful to me, that already gets me to listen more intently. So those are the three things. And just to give you an example, I'm going to walk you through my elevator pitch. So the first thing, as I said, is make me curious. And how do I do that? Well, I use stats and I ask questions. Those are the ways that really get people to, at least, again, part of it is I assume that people don't know anything about what I do or how I can help them. I don't start there. I start with what is the problem. So just as I did here, this is how I start really every presentation. We're being messaged at the rate of 12,000 messages a day. That's more than 4 million a year. It's really noisy, right? It's a noisy space out there, and you're trying to break out of that. So the question is, are you cutting through the noise? That's the question, right? That's the question I always ask. So I don't ask, are you having trouble with messaging? Are you having trouble? You know, I'm just literally just want to start at the beginning, which is, are you cutting through the noise? And then the next thing is, what is the problem? Well, generic messaging, which by the way is what most people do, generic messaging speaks to no one. And more importantly, it makes you invisible to your ideal customer. Now, remember, we're in the digital space, in the metaverse. And the only way for people to find you is if you have clear, succinct messaging that helps you break out of the thousands of other messages, and we're able to find you. Because again, if you can't find me, you're not going to be able to buy me. You're certainly not going to remember me. The other thing that's really important is avoiding confusing and disjointed messaging. And I see this a lot when we move from platform to platform. So if you were to go on my website, on my LinkedIn profile, on my Twitter feed, you will see the same messaging. In fact, I use the same image. Why? Because images also help us connect to the message more quickly. It helps us remember. So one of the things you really want to avoid is to make it like every time I land on something that's related to you, it's like I have to start all over again. Remember, I've got 4 seconds. I want to know who you are, and I want to know it quickly so I can decide if this is something I need to even pursue. So you wanted to also make sure that everything is lined up, and you, of course, you want to be on brand, which is why you want to start with, do I know who I am as a brand? So the solution, we know what the problem is. Generic messaging is making you invisible. So what's the solution? Because I'm talking about myself, this is my solution. I make fuzzy clear. That's all I do. I make fuzzy clear. I help you cut through the noise with messaging that's going to engage with people. And that's really, again, you want it to make it simple enough so that people want to say, tell me more, right? And if people don't ask you that, that's okay. We can talk about something else, right? But again, and we do a lot of networking now virtually. And so we have even less time because we're in breakout sessions and you've got 15 seconds. And the most you should spend on your elevator pitch is 30 seconds. And we'll talk about that when we get to the exercise. So now I'm going to show you 3 examples of what does that look like, right? So I can use all these great words and say, yeah, I make fuzzy clear. What does that look like in real life, in application? How do I apply that? How does that show up for people? So I'm going to show you 3 homepages for 3 different clients, and then let we can talk about specifically what in terms of the messaging. So the first one is Weisswood Strategies. So they're a communications company. And I was working with the founder. She had just launched her business, her startup, and this was in 2020, at the end of 2020. And what was interesting here is that she was doing exactly what I just talked about, generic messaging, and she was getting no traction. She wasn't getting any, it was like really impossible. And unless you get in front of somebody and walk them through all the different things, that's a huge conversation. Most of us don't have time for that. So what I realized during our brand tune-up process is that really she works best with one type of client, which is nonprofits. And that includes large international nonprofits, national nonprofits, educational institutions, because they live and die by fundraising, by money. They have to get grants to move forward. And the fact that this is their sweet spot, this is what they do now they're solving a real problem and they have a real solution. They speak the language of fundraising. So that's the tagline. And it's not just sounds nice, it actually means something, because if we are speaking the language of fundraising, it doesn't matter what language you speak, we can still help you because we speak the language of fundraising, and that's the same in any language. So the next one is a nonprofit. And so Wayne County Camp Association is in Northeast Pennsylvania. And for those of you who know anything about that area, it's beautiful. It really is. And I've been up there many times when I was working with them. But here's the problem with messaging on beautiful nature. When you are a summer camp association, you're up against Maine. And can you mute whoever that is, Lori, please? And so when you're up against Maine, so you unmuted me as well.
It was easier than going through all the people we have. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I was, you know, thank you. So that's a real issue, right? So again, if you're messaging, if you want to cut through the noise, and you want people to come to your camps, your summer camp, and send your kids there, you cannot compete in a space that's already taken. And so it took a little convincing, I have to tell you, because they had been messaging on their beautiful nature, you know, their beautiful environments for decades. And what was happening is that membership, or that their signups were falling, right? They were losing kids. And so what I discovered in my research and working with them is that their mission is to literally build a better world, one camper at a time. And so they take that really seriously. And I had read dozens of letters about what going to their camps meant to these campers and how it changed their life. And it was interesting because at one point, one of the camp directors said to me, but isn't that what every camp does? I said, well, that may be true, but they're not messaging on that. And so you have the opportunity to actually own that space. And now other people are going to have to butt up against what you already own. And they've got the goods, right? Because the numbers speak for themselves. You know, 28,000 each summer over decades, you know, that's a lot of impact. So the last one, if I can get to it, there we go, is an Appellate Law Group. It's a boutique firm. And what was interesting about this one, and I don't like to, and by the way, I don't show the befores because that feels to me a little bit, you know, it's like showing people's dirty laundry, and I don't really like doing that. But I can tell you that what they were doing before didn't look anything like this, right? Because they were, again, it was a fairly new startup. I mean, they've been established now for several years, but they missed the mark about where they really wanted to go. And once we identified that they wanted to be global and that they wanted to really tap into these multi-million-dollar international corporate law firms that would hire them, they realized that they were aiming too low and their messaging wasn't resonating, and they were actually having trouble finding clients. So what we identified three things that would make them a choice, right? The first one is you need to build trust and credibility. Trust and credibility are huge, of course. This is in the legal industry, you need to have that. And she had that in spades, but was never talking about any of this, right? Winning 3 out of 4 appeals, that's pretty impressive. And what I especially love, like together we kind of, you know, this idea of this combination of art and skill, I thought that, you know, that's just so lovely, right? It really helped kind of present her in a light that says, I know what I'm doing. And oh, by the way, I win more often than I lose. The next one was the international piece, right? So again, she had never talked about this. And this was like a huge thing. This is a $200 million judgment that she appealed for the Republic of Uruguay, right? Which she had never talked about. And now all of a sudden it's like, I can see why I would hire you, right? Because you can do this, right? So part of it is also kind of leading, you know, like don't bury the lead, as they say, right? You want to really lead with what makes you a unique brand, but also while you remember that what these companies are looking for are these 3 things: credibility, trust, and the last one is diversity, because you know, they have to dedicate some of their projects have to go to women-owned businesses, and you know, so being a woman-owned business help them fulfill their diversity requirement. So those were so these are the examples that I wanted to show you, and hopefully that helps put things in perspective. I don't know where we are in time, but the next thing that we're going to do, oh, hold on one second. So I'm going to stop here. This is the end of my formal presentation. But what I want you now to think about is, since we know it's a noisy world, how are you going to stand out? I'm going to give you guys a chance. You're going to have a chance to now try on your elevator pitches. And so I'm going to give you some some information to take with you when you go to breakout rooms. So here's what I want you to think about. So we're going to do this breakout session. We'll see how that all works out. We kind of have an idea of how much time we have there, but each of you will be in groups of 4. You'll each have 2 to 3 minutes. And what I want you to remember is when you do your pitch, here are the 3 things I want you to remember. And Lori, if you could put those in the chat, those 3 things. So one is what's the problem that you're solving? Who are you solving it for? Who needs that solution? And the result, because you always want to connect the solution to an outcome. And you need to do this in 30 seconds. So at the end, when we're done, when you come back out, we'll take a look at some of the pitches, and then I will take a couple of them and help you switch your pitch. So, whoops. So I'm going to stop. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I did it in a private message instead of everyone, so I'm just going to resend it to everyone.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stop my presentation and just leave this out. Let's breakout pitches. So I think we have time for some questions, don't we, Lori?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so here we go. Let's see if you guys, oh yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, I realized that I was muted. Technology. All right. So if you could put in some questions, I'd be happy to take a few minutes to answer your questions. I wanted to leave enough time so that we have time for the transition into breakout sessions. We have time for you guys to really kind of go to town with your pitches. Which one is your favorite? So actually, you know what? While we're doing the questions, I'm going to stop the share so I can see. I can see the gallery view. Someone is not muted. Okay, here we go. I just muted her. Yeah. So the problem is when you're not muted and we're in a group setting, there's a lot of background noise that gets picked up. How did you get to be a best-selling author right out of the gate? Oh my goodness. Oh, well, geez, Sharon, thank you. I wasn't expecting that question. Well, it helped that Seth Godin wrote me a blurb. Seth Godin liked my book. So, and it took 5 years, by the way, for me to go from the idea that I had to actually getting a copy of my book in my hands. And then, of course, we had a pandemic in the middle of all that. It was actually supposed to come out in 2020. And as it turns out, it's actually a good thing that it came out in 2021, because during the pandemic, the number of startups grew by like 28%. Thanks, Sharon. So yes, the difference between value proposition and elevator pitch. Oh, what are the 3 things companies are looking for? Oh, yes. So that was specific for that particular client. But I would say that building trust, building your credibility, and making sure that you're solving a real problem for them, those are still, it's really the same 3 things, right? And building trust happens through engagement. That's why social media is so important. And then the other piece of that, let me just make sure I'm looking at the right thing, is that, the way you build credibility is by having followers and having connections, but also having engagement. It's not just, having several thousand connections, although, when you get to be, then you get into influencer space, right? When you have 10 million followers, that's a whole different conversation. But for most of us, it's really about, this is why that other part is so important. If you identify who you are and who they are, then you can also figure out which platform those people live on. And that's how you start to build credibility. And by publishing, I do a lot of blogging, I do a lot of speaking, that's, how I built credibility. And then writing a book is another, that's a real credibility builder, because as a result of the book, I've been invited, I'm about to do, I think, my 12th podcast in less than a year. So those are the kinds of things you want to look for. And then with that particular client, she understood that, the diversity piece, that was really important for these large companies. So part of your job is to figure that out. And I don't know the answer because each of you has different kinds of clients. So let's see. So I wanted to answer the value proposition and elevator pitch question, because that's a really good question. So it's, every elevator pitch has the value proposition built into it, but every value proposition is not an elevator pitch, right? The value proposition is really that one point of difference. That one point of difference, your why, is what you use to build your elevator pitch. So I hope I answered that. Markia, am I saying your name right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that was very helpful. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Oh, so glad. What's the best way to determine the job to be done, not always obvious? Okay, I don't understand I don't understand the question. Debbie, where are you?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, when we think about, Clay Christensen, HBS, the job to be done, what is it that people are buying? The value proposition. It's not always, we go back to, I think it was, McDonald's, people are buying the milkshake because it's thick. They suck it through the straw. It helps to, keep them aware as they're driving to work.
You know what? I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you because you're going down into the weeds on this one. They don't buy a McDonald's milkshake because of that. They buy it because it's McDonald's. First, they built that brand, and then they had those, millions of burgers sold, and now it's just probably in the billions. We trust the brand. That's why we go there. So I think your question is really, it's not really about the product. I mean, yes, that's where marketing comes in, right? So now, and I don't have time to cover. I mean, I could do a whole talk just on marketing, but
Right.
This talk is really about, if you clarify your brand and you understand who that person is and the problem you're solving. And the original problem that McDonald's was solving was not a milkshake, was time. Was giving food. And at that time, and I have a whole story of McDonald's. Let me move on, because
Actually, what I would like to do, if I may interrupt, Orly, is we're going to break out into breakout sessions.
Yes.
So do you want to explain what the
Yes.
goal is?
So I already did explain it, but let me
Just a reminder.
So we're going to break you out into groups of 4. I'm going to pop in and out of a few of you of the sessions. How many are we now? So we're at 35. So that's good. So I'll be able to, hopefully sit in on several of your sessions, and then I'll come back, and if there's time, I'll answer some more questions. But you're right, Lori, we do need to get into breakouts. So what you're going to do is you will take turns, each of you now. Unfortunately, we don't have like a bot in each breakout session that can count. So one of you will have to time each of you, so that, because you only get 2 to 3 minutes. So let's say it's 3 minutes each. So that means that you should be able to give your pitch a couple of times. And then, just let the next person say it. And then, because I think we have a manageable enough group, when we come back, what I'm going to ask is maybe 3 of the groups to give me 3 different pitches that stood out for them. And then what I will be doing is working with people individually on helping them switch their pitch. And by that, I mean, kind of zeroing in on what the message is and seeing if I can help you, literally in real time on the ground, work with you on your pitch. So think about if you want to be a volunteer. Okay.
And the idea is to give you a chance to try yours with folks who understand the intent. So I'm going to send you to your rooms now. We'll see you in about 15 minutes.
Okay, here we go. This is cool.
There we go. Hello, Pam. Hello, Richard. Hello, John. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to unmute you. My apologies.
Hello, how are you?
Great. Hi, John. It's been a long time since you and I have connected. Probably about 5-6 years.
Maybe more. I popped in. I'm between client meetings, one ending at 12:30 and one starting at 1 o'clock. But I I was hoping to hear at least a little bit of Orly's pitch. She and I first met probably 20 years ago when I first went on my own, and met, as you do early on there. I'm sorry, Mars, I wasn't there. And then, we both just, you go your way. When I jump into a lot of the WAFA events, I find them really worthwhile. And when I saw it was her, it was a double whammy, but I knew I couldn't jump off into the breakout room.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So how are the things in these years in between?
Very good, thank you.
Good.
And we're delighted to have you be a supporter of WAFA. And we're recording the session, so anything that you missed, you'll be able to pick it up.
That's part of why I register, right? Just in case clients get in the way. Yeah, I send a lot of my MBAs, male, female, in between, whatever, to the WAFA events. I think that I just think it's the newsletters are informative enough to draw people in when you get the profiles and things, and then the events. They're good, and it's a good network, I think, for people to, particularly a lot of the folks that have not graduated, to understand that when they graduate, they're not just in the big alum circle, but they can be in this kind of women's founders circle of their Wharton colleagues, and just huge power there. Now, again, I'm not in a lot of these meetings, but my expectation is just that these alums who are engaged are reaching out to these recent alums when they connect. So
we are trying. So
yeah,
we have, in the 3 years that WAFA has existed, we're now at over 4,000 members.
not crazy.
And we're global. We've heard that the Club of Southern California is at 5,600. So our goal is to be at 7,000 by the end of 2023.
That's a beautiful goal. I love it. I love it. Well, and from a guy who admittedly is not in any of the clubs right now. I mean, I'm living 6 miles from campus, and I haven't been in the Philly club in a while. But that's a great goal. So,
Well, and we want it to be a meaningful relationship, not just counting numbers. But if you have any recommendations for folks you think would be, great presenters, or that, should be included in, we're more than happy to reach out.
I've got to, and that's, you're answering the question. So not necessarily alums,
Doesn't
right?
have to be.
Like thought leaders across the board. I've got a couple of clients that I think could bring value to audiences, and already do in some ways. So yeah, I can definitely make those connections.
So in the beginning, we talked about, we see 3 categories: founders, funders, and friends. I love Guy Fieri's triple D, so we're triple F. And so about 80% of our members are Wharton alumni, but doesn't have to be. And we love having men, we love having non-Penn people. It's about where we can make impact. And it's looking at personal still, how can we brand ourselves? How can we brand our groups? How do we connect funders and founders? We're going to be having, how do you write the perfect pitch deck? So it's about trying to cover the whole expanse.
First of all, that was information that I did not know. I didn't realize that I could see speakers kind of come from anywhere where they can bring value. I've always assumed to be a member versus me, who's just kind of a hanger on. You were a female alum, but clearly that's not the case.
About 80% is the school's requirement.
Okay.
And I'm from the belief that diversity means not just gender and race and ethnicity, but thought and skill set. I'm the novel HR person in the finance community.
There's a group out there called the C-Suite Network that a friend of mine is very engaged with at the top. Big national organization, and they have a lead her, H-E-R, lead hership group that runs really good events. And so I signed up for the one, and then I reached out to the host and said, I'm a guy, but I really like this topic. And she didn't come back in 30 seconds. love to have you. So I've now been on probably 3 of their events, the only guy who is in these calls. So to your point, I mean, welcoming is welcoming, right? And diversity of the people listening as much as the people speaking, I think only benefits the group in the end. Have you guys, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was because sometimes the best wisdom is looking from the outside in, because you can't see the forest through the trees. You know, you get into, you know, I mean, one of the best examples I'd ever heard, the guy who invented the split bicycle seat was in like automotive. I mean, like, it had nothing to do with bicycles, but he was an avid cyclist. And, you know, on those long rides, he was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And sought out a new solution.
It's so funny you said that, because right after the first one, the woman who was the host sent me an email that said, "Love to get your perspective," you know, from a guy's perspective. And I said, well, I'm a guy and here's a perspective, but I'm not, it's a guy's perspective. Because she had gone to LinkedIn, she said, "Oh, you're an advisor, you work with stars, blah, blah, blah." So we really love to hear that, because that's not necessarily the people we have here. We generally have corporate types. And so it was interesting. Have you, you know, my colleague in the VIP program in Philly, Jeffrey Babbitt, he just does a fantastic piece on pitching, on customer discovery. We have a series of 5 workshops that we run each semester in the accelerator.
Okay.
And Jeffrey teaches 4. He used to be the only guy. And then when I came around a couple of years ago, now I teach 1 on building entrepreneurial teams. Jeffrey's a professor. He's busy as heck, plus doing this with VIP with me. But he would be outstanding to deliver any of his 4 workshops, all of which are bottled to be delivered in an hour. And I'm sure he could probably shrink that down. So just some food for thought.
So what's the best way for me to reach you, John?
So easiest is my, if just my business email. So it's John@Ondik, first name at last name.com. Ondik is ONDIK. Well, yeah, you're standing on it. So literally John@Ondik.com. So if you drop me a note, I will
Okay.
make some connections. I'm going to jump off and go to my 1 o'clock client meeting now. And I'll be willing to discuss it with Jeffrey, get you guys connected.
That would be fantastic.
And I just think the WAFA is, again, I'm a fan. I think that audience would benefit from the same stuff that we're pitching to MBA and undergrad entrepreneurs. So,
And we schedule for events like every 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm sure we can find a time that fits in his calendar and yours.
that would be great. That would be great. He and I are actually going to meet. Today's Tuesday. That's how my week is already. He and I are meeting Thursday at Wharton, and I'll just mention it to him in passing and say that we had a chance to catch up. I'm going to
Fantastic.
jump into my 1 o'clock.
Been a pleasure catching up. Thank
Glad
you.
to be there. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I don't know, Richard, Pam, are you both there or? It's just the 3 of us right now until everybody comes back in. So if you want to unmute, you're more than welcome to. Pam,
I am still here. I'm taking advantage of a beautiful day in Chicago. So I'm out on my patio and it's very noisy.
It's not picking up at all.
Ah,
Not at all. So thank you. I've been reading your comments. I would love to learn more.
well, I would love to talk to you guys. I'm definitely a friend because I'm a Chicago booth alum and some people recommended.
I'm sorry, who? I'm just kidding. We have quite a few folks on our calendar that are Harvard. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't think I've heard of that program.
No, I would love to connect. I've attended several of your events and I run a pretty early stage software company. And I just have found them really useful, a slightly different take than some of the stuff I get, from our community. And especially when I can give back, I'm always appreciative of that as well.
Outstanding. We have one that we're going to be having in October. She just got a new job, so she figures by October she'll have gotten used to her job. Who's going to be talking about the lessons they didn't teach you in business school.
Oh my gosh, we could
That you
do.
learn from being practical.
Yeah.
It sounds great. We have in July one that's going to be talking about what's the difference between a good entrepreneur and a great one.
Yeah.
He's going to share stories about him and his brother. He and his brother. His brother is already retired and he's just 39.
Oh, wow.
But they have totally different perspectives. One likes companies 30 people or less. The other one sold a 600-person company. So we're trying to provide things that either aren't the textbook, but they work because people have tried them, and it's like proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Well, one of the hashtags I use on LinkedIn is CEO Mom, because I have 9-year-old twins, and I've run I was a solo entrepreneur for about 10 years, and we started our software adventure 3 years ago. So my sons were, just turning 6, and
wow, that's a lot to tackle at one time.
It is. And I talk to a lot of women and I talk to a lot of men, and I think there's some really different considerations, but there's also a lot of amazing things. But if you guys are looking for, not your typical topics, I mean, I get to speak on this stuff all over the country. I go to a lot of different universities, and I love it. I mean, it's valuable because you just don't want the textbook stuff.
We don't, and we don't want the classroom, and we don't want the you see it in the grant scheme. What we're really looking for is what's practical, what works, how to really apply it. It reminds me when you were talking about having the 6-year-old twins at the time you started. Many years ago, I was working in a group and 2 women happened to deliver at the same time. One had twins and one had just one. And so the one who had twins would come to work every day looking fresh, and the one who had the single one looked like a mess. And finally, she went to the one twin. She says, all right, she gives in. What's her secret? And she said, the secret is when they cry in the middle of the night, either your husband gets them or they learn to defend for themselves. The kids learn it's not going to work. She said, necessity, thank you for the LinkedIn. She said, necessity takes over. And if you yield to that, she said, it takes care of everything. And like 2 weeks later, the one who had the single said, you're right, I love it. I slept through the night.
You learn. Well, we joke because my husband's a project manager and I did a ton of project management, and you learn a little bit how to manage some.
Hey, everybody. I heard some really nice pitches. Good job. So let's see, we're waiting for everybody to come back. So while we're waiting, I think we have time. We have time for maybe 3, Lori, or because we need time for the closing. So maybe just 2. Do I have time for 2?
It's up to everyone here. I think the folks who had to drop off at 1 have dropped off.
Right.
And so we have a little bit more time. So why don't we do the close first, and then we'll come back and do the break. So that way, if anybody needs to step out, we can summarize. And then anybody who wants to stay on and have Orly help with your pitch, we can do some real time helping till about 1:30. Does that work for you, Orly?
Yes. And so I'm going to share my screen again because for the closing. So hang on 1 second.
And as you can see, it's never too young to start with.
I know, 2 months. Remy is now a WAFA member. Okay, whoops, sorry. And up. Here we go. Okay, Lori?
So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I hope that it was very, very meaningful. Please check out WAFA. We have events that are happening every 2 to 3 weeks. And what we're trying to do is to offer you things not only in presentation form, but if you will go to the next slide, Orly. Please feel free to reach out to Orly, her book. We're going to offer a 20% discount. Make sure you let her know that you were part of this presentation so that you can actually apply in your work. We don't want to just be talking heads and go, oh, that was nice, but what am I going to do about it? And you walk away and it's done. So please take advantage of the offers, or leave or go to the next screen as well. There are a couple of different options that she has that are available for you, including a complimentary short one-on-one to see whether or not it makes sense. And then from there to build out, and again, there'll be discounts for having participated today. It's really important to us to be able to give all of our members and guests the ability to be successful. And the best way to do that is to make connections, is to build community, which is what WAFA is all about. So again, if you're a member of the Triple F, which includes everybody, if you're a founder, a funder, or a friend, please check out our website, hellowafa.org, and you can learn more about us. You can learn about opportunities. We love to profile both founders and funders. We love to connect them so that business gets done and we can increase the number of women who are successful entrepreneurs. And if you're interested in sharing a skill and experience, please reach out to us. We love to have programming, and it's one of those rare organizations. Last year, WAFA put on 34 events. And I was teasing with John Ondick earlier while you were all in your breaks that Southern California has 5,600 members. We're looking to increase our 4,000 global members. So we do cover the entire globe. Our goal is to hit 7,000 by the end of 2023. And it's not just about growth in numbers, but it's about building an amazingly strong community. So I encourage everyone, please stay on and take the opportunity to get some free advice, to pitch real time. And you'll have Orly and an audience to help you make some adjustments. So thank you so very much for being with us today. And I'm going to stop the recording so you don't have to feel like you're advertising all your business.
Right.
And,
I'm gonna stop the share now. And what